The following is a presentation of Apologetics Press.
The atheistic attack on the God of the Bible has been increasing in the recent years. I want to read to you a quote from Richard Dawkins, who's recognized as probably the leading atheist in the world. He says this about the God of the Old Testament. He says, "The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, vindictive, bloodthirsty, ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully." Now, there are lots of accusations in that one statement that Dawkins makes against the God of the Old Testament, but the ones I want to hone in on for this lesson are the accusations that God is genocidal and filicidal. You see, the atheistic community looks at the God of the Bible and says, God kills people. And because the God of the Bible kills people, that makes Him immoral. Of course, Dawkins is not the only one who accuses God of this kind of activity. I want to read to you a statement from Christopher Hitchens. Christopher Hitchens says, God is an evil monster. And he says the actions and instructions in the Old Testament from God cause the ground to be forever soaked with the blood of the innocent. There again, Christopher Hitchens says that the God of the Bible has killed so many innocent people that the ground is forever soaked with their blood, and that's one thing that shows that the God of the Bible can't be a perfectly moral God. Of course, Hitchens and Dawkins are not the only ones who have made these kinds of accusations. Dan Barker said this about God. He said, "There is not enough space to mention all of the places in the Bible where God committed, commanded, or condoned murder." You see the accusation there. God can't be a moral God because He has committed, commanded, and condoned murder. God kills people. That's wrong. And the atheistic community claims to have a moral superiority that can look at the Bible and show that that is wrong. Of course, the question that we're going to have to ask, and that we're going to have to ask throughout this entire series, is where in the world would an atheistic philosophy get the idea that some actions are morally right and some actions are morally wrong? They can't give you an objective morality. Atheism is an objectively foundationless idea. Let's listen to what William Provine said in his discussion on the campus of the University of Tennessee in Knoxville in his Darwin Day address. He said that there were no foundations for ethics. In fact, I'll read it to you. He says, naturalistic evolution has clear consequences that Charles Darwin understood perfectly. Number one, no gods worth having exist. Number two, no life after death exists. Number three, no ultimate foundation for ethics exist. Number four, no ultimate meaning in life exists. And number five, human free will is non-existent. You see what Provine was saying there? What Provine was saying is that according to atheistic evolution, Charles Darwin's naturalistic evolution, there is no possible way that atheistic philosophy can give you an objective moral value. Now, the atheistic community would like you to think that they have a foundation upon which they're claiming that this is right and this is wrong, and they'd like to appeal to your emotion and to say something that is implied in their statement. Hey, everybody knows it's wrong to kill people, and the God of the Bible has commanded or condoned killing people, and so the God of the Bible must not be a moral God. But if you're to analyze that for what it really says, you're going to have to ask the atheistic community, upon what are you basing your idea that it's wrong to kill people? William Provine would tell you that there's no basis for that, no foundation for that. Now, of course, Provine's not the only one that recognizes that that's one of the moral implications of atheism. Friedrich Nietzsche recognized this very well. And Nietzsche said, and I quote, "We believe that severity, violence, slavery, danger in the street and in the heart, secrecy, stoicism, tempter's art, and devilry of every kind, that everything wicked, terrible, tyrannical, predatory, and serpentine in man serves as well for the elevation of the human species as its opposite." You hear what Nietzsche says? Humans have evolved to a certain level of superiority over the animal kingdom. And would you like to determine what's right and what's wrong about human behavior? Well, hold on before you do that. Because everything in humans, tempter's art, devilry, secrecy, stoicism, all that has worked for the elevation of the human animal. So if you were going to try to say this is right and this is wrong, what Nietzsche would say is, wait just a second, we need to go beyond good and evil, and we need to ask ourselves what has helped humans evolve. What has helped humans come to the state of superiority that they have and complexity that they have over the animal kingdom? And the answer to that, according to Nietzsche, and according to the absolute implication of the idea that there's no God, is that whatever is good for the elevation of the human species can't be called bad. Well, what does Nietzsche say is good? Severity, everything serpentine in man. How in the world could you call that good? Well, there's only one way you could call it good. And that's if there's no God and there's no moral standard and there's no foundation upon which to base an ethic, then you would have to say, you'd be forced to say, well, we don't like it. We don't think that a society can continue to prosper because of it. But if you were to say, is this wrong? The atheistic community can't say it's wrong. They can say they don't like it. They can say they'd like to see it something different or some way differently. But they cannot say it's objectively morally wrong. Because if they do, if they say it's objectively morally wrong, then that means there's an objective moral law. And if there's an objective moral law, you can't get that from primordial slime. That doesn't evolve over millions of years. That has to come down from someone higher than humans. Where would you get that? There's only one place: a creator. As we're looking at this idea, you remember Provine said that Charles Darwin understood this perfectly. I'm going to show you just how well Charles Darwin did understand it. Let me quote for you a statement he made in his book, The Autobiography of Charles Darwin. He said, "A man who has no assured and ever-present belief in the existence of a personal God, or of a future existence with retribution and reward, can have for his rule of life, as far as I can see, only to follow those impulses and instincts which are strongest or which seem to him the best ones." You see what Charles Darwin said? If a person doesn't believe in a God, if he doesn't think that there is going to be a future existence of retribution and reward, the best that person can do as it relates to morals is to follow the instincts and impulses that seem the best ones to him. Now, let's go back to this question. The atheist saying, well, the God of the Bible condones and commands people to be killed, and that makes him immoral. No, atheism can't give you what is moral or immoral, so they have no ground upon which to stand. But looking at the situation, does God command certain people to be killed? Yes. Nothing about that the Christian theist is trying to run away from Genesis all the way to the book of Revelation. You see God commanding or directly causing a person to be killed. Why is that? I'll tell you what you see in lots of places. You see God bringing in righteous judgment on people who were so murderously sinful they needed to be eliminated. You see the God of the Bible bringing in justice. Now, Dan Barker said there's not enough space to mention all the places in the Bible where God committed, commanded, or condoned murder. But if you were to look in the Bible and you were to look at that murder that Barker is suggesting God committed, much of it is in relation to the evil, wicked things that the Israelites or other people were doing And that's why they were punished. Look in the book of Leviticus in chapter 18, verses 24 through 25. You read this. Do not defile yourselves with any of these things, for by all these the nations are defiled, which I'm casting out before you. For the land is defiled. Therefore I visit the punishment of its iniquity upon it, and the land vomits out its inhabitants. You see what's going on there? There are wicked, sinful people. In fact, if you were to look at what many of the nations were doing, they were sacrificing their children to Molech. They were committing sins and crimes that even according to modern day standards would call for, in many cases, the death penalty. And God is saying that these people are responsible for committing crimes, and that's why they need to be eliminated. When you present that to the atheist, they immediately backpedal and say, oh, okay, hold on, wait just a second. That's not what I'm really saying. I'm not saying all death in the Bible is bad. I'm just saying some of it is. I want to show you this backpedaling idea that's been done, and that is a frequent tactic. When someone says, hold on, not all the death is bad, then the atheistic community, many of them have to say, yes, okay, you're right. Let's look in the debate with Dan Barker and Peter Payne. Peter Payne had mentioned this fact that many of the people who were killed by God or commanded to be killed by God were very serious criminals. And Barker said this, maybe some of those men were guilty of committing war crimes, and maybe some of them were justifiably guilty, Peter, of committing some kind of crimes. But the children, the fetuses, do you hear what Dan Barker is saying there? He's saying, all right, hold on, you're right. It's not true that God is immoral for killing all people, because it might be the case, and you could argue that there were some of the people that God killed who were guilty of war crimes or guilty of other crimes that might possibly be justifiably punished in that way. But what about the babies? What about the fetuses? You see, the argument has now gone from God kills people to God kills innocent people. Is it true that in the Bible God has killed babies directly or indirectly? Absolutely, that's true. That's nothing that the Christian theist needs to run away from or has to run away from if he wants to contend that the God of the Bible is moral. When God brought in the flood on the world of the ungodly, there in Noah's day, estimated that there were 2 billion people. Out of those 2 billion people, were many or most of them adults who had committed crimes that would have been worthy to be punished by death? Sure. But were some of them, several thousand, several hundred thousand, most likely innocent children that had not committed crimes that would be worthy of a death because of criminal activity? Absolutely. Some of them were innocent children. But do you know the irony of this situation? The atheist says, hey, God's immoral for killing innocent children, but the atheist doesn't have a problem with killing innocent children. You say, hold on, yes they do. I don't see any atheists out there who are murdering any innocent children. No, you wouldn't see that, but you would see that the philosophy of atheism allows for the death of children. Let me read to you several quotes from the atheistic community. In fact, these are some of the higher-ups in the atheistic community as it relates to this idea of the death of innocent children. If you were to listen to Peter Singer, Peter Singer is recognized in the atheistic community as one of the leading ethicists in the world. In fact, in 2008, in Dan Barker's book, Godless, he said that Peter Singer is the leading atheist in the world as far as it goes with ethicists. So he says, Peter Singer is the world's leading ethicist. And here's what Peter Singer says. He says that a fetus is known to be disabled is widely accepted as grounds for abortion. Yet in discussing abortion, we say that birth does not mark a morally significant dividing line. I cannot see how one could defend the view that fetuses may be replaced before birth, but newborn infants may not be. Now, Peter Singer is certainly not saying that abortion is something that's wrong. In fact, he's saying abortion is something that's very right, a position that you certainly would never get from the Bible. The idea that a human could extinguish the life of an unborn child because it would be inconvenient or disabled or something along those lines. But Peter Singer says, I don't understand how morally a person could defend the position that you could kill a baby in utero. You could kill a baby before it's born because it's disabled or something like that. But after it's born, you couldn't kill it. And we're going to see the implication of that. What he's saying is, he thinks there ought to be a period after the birth of a child that the society assesses its value to society and then determines if it should stay alive or not. He thinks there should be a period like of a month or 2 months in which the doctors get with the parents and they see if this society is going to be if it's going to benefit society to keep this child alive. And if it is, then keep the child. If not, then go ahead and kill the child, even if the child is already born. Now, I'm not putting words into his mouth. I'm going to let you read that from him. Let me read to you another quote from a lady by the name of Barbara Burke. She wrote this about fetuses, about children that are not yet born. She says, among some animal species, infant killing appears to be a natural practice. Could it be natural for humans too? A trait inherited from our primate ancestors. Charles Darwin noted in The Descent of Man that infanticide has been probably the most important of all checks on population growth throughout most of human history. Now, Dan Barker, I thought you had a problem with the killing of fetuses. So you would then, I guess, assume, have a problem with abortion, do you? No. No, we don't have a problem with abortion. Peter Singer says, well, I don't understand how you can kill a child in utero, but then after the child's born, you can say that there's something wrong with that. I thought the atheistic community was saying that God is immoral because God has killed innocent children. And yet what we're hearing from Singer and Barker and Burke and the rest of the higher-ups in the atheistic community is that there's nothing wrong with killing children. It's just that God commanded or condoned the death of certain children that we as the atheistic community would not have thought would be in a category that would be worthy of death. And what category would that be? Well, mentally sound or physically able to do the things that the rest of society does. Let me let you in on a statement by Sam Harris as he's talking about these innocent fetuses that Dan Barker was so adamantly alleging should have been kept alive. Sam Harris says this. He says, many of us consider human fetuses in the first trimester to be more or less like rabbits, having imputed to them a range of happiness and suffering that does not grant them full status in our moral community. You understand that? You hear what Sam Harris is saying? Fetuses, well, they're kind of like rabbits. And you could eat a rabbit. You could kill a rabbit. You could make sure that a rabbit didn't reproduce so that you had a whole lot more rabbits. And fetuses in the first trimester, they're pretty much like rabbits, and they're not in our moral community. Meaning what, Sam Harris? Meaning what can you do to a fetus that you consider to be more or less like a rabbit? I think you see exactly what he's meaning. Meaning that it would not be wrong to kill that fetus, that unborn child. Let me let Peter Singer say it to you more clearly. Here's what he said. Nevertheless, the main point is clear. Killing a disabled infant is not morally equivalent to killing a person. Very often, it's not wrong at all. I don't think you need me to spell out for you what Peter Singer just said. He just said that according to his atheistic philosophy, it could be the case that for a person, an atheistic ethicist, to decide when to take the life of a child, and you could kill that child, and it wouldn't be morally wrong at all. Well, hold on just a second. I thought you were explaining to us atheist that the God of the Bible was immoral because on occasion actions from God or commanded by God caused the death of innocent children. That's what the claim is, and yet the atheistic community, at least those who are being candid about the implications of atheism, admit that, okay, yeah, Charles Darwin did say that infanticide checks the population, and if we're nothing more than higher animals and lower animals check their population by killing their babies, well then maybe we humans can do that too. And one way to decide if you should keep a baby or not would be to look and see if it's disabled or see if it's not going to be a benefit to society. I thought you said God was immoral for causing the death of innocent children, and now what we're seeing from the atheistic community is they're admitting, oh, well, we think it would be all right to kill certain children if they're disabled, if they're not going to be as beneficial to society as we think they should be. you see, they have set themselves up as the judges who determine when it would be right or when it would be wrong to kill a child. So they're not saying we've got a blanket problem with God killing innocent children. They're saying we've got a problem with God killing innocent children that we don't think meet certain criteria. They weren't disabled. They weren't. Well, that's not what you said. And in fact, there's something very different about when God has commanded or condoned or indirectly caused the death of innocent children. You see, the atheistic community believes that this life is all that there is. And so when they admit that you could kill a child for some reason, they think that you could kill a child and take from that child everything that there is. Listen to this statement by Dan Barker. Dan Barker said that since this life is the only life we atheists have, each decision is crucial and we're accountable for our actions right now. Life is dear, it's fleeting, it's vibrant and vulnerable, it's heartbreaking, it can be lost, it will be lost. But we exist now, we are caring, intelligent animals and can treasure our brief lives. You mean to tell me that the atheistic philosophy allows for the death of certain children based on certain criteria, and it thinks that it's taking from those children everything that there is, exterminating them, taking from them their whole life, and that's morally permissible? That's exactly what these people are contending. That's what the atheistic philosophy allows. But that's very different from the picture that's presented to you in the Bible. God never takes everything that there is from any person, because the Bible consistently presents a picture of humans having more than a physical being. The Bible presents a picture of humans having an immortal soul. Now, the skeptics is going to say, wait just a second, we don't believe in an immortal soul. You can't use an immortal soul in this instance to try to get your God out of this moral dilemma. Well, why not? Where did you get the idea that the God of the Bible has killed innocent children, directly or indirectly? You got that from the Bible. Are you suggesting then that you should take certain parts of the Bible but not allow the rest of the Bible to answer these alleged moral allegations against God? No, that wouldn't be fair at all. If an immortal soul makes a difference in this discussion, whether you believe it or not, if it shows that there's no immoral action on God's part, then you can't jettison that part of the Bible and accept the part where He allowed or directly or indirectly caused the death of innocent children. Does the Bible present a picture of all humans, including babies, as having an immortal soul? Absolutely, positively it does. Let's listen to some of those comments from the Bible. Jesus in Matthew chapter 16 verse 26 says, "For what is it to profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul?" You see, the Bible never says that God takes all that there is from a child. The atheistic community says that would be all right. The God of the Bible's never done that. Any time that the God of the Bible has taken the physical life of a person, He has never extinguished their immortal soul. So you can see right up front that the atheist claims that God's being immoral, but then the atheist admits that, oh, okay, we think that you could kill innocent children even if there's no immortal soul and even if we take from that child all that there is. The next question we would simply need to ask is, if God is so immoral for directly or indirectly causing the death of an innocent child, what happens to the innocent child? Are you saying that God is doing something to that child that's immoral? You're saying that God is taking something from that child? What's He giving the child? Well, it just so happens that if a child has an immortal soul, that under certain conditions you could show that physical death but eternal life would be a more preferred position than physical life. You know, when you read the Bible, you see that under certain circumstances it is the case that physical life could be a burden to people who are suffering in some types of ways. Let me read to you a statement by the Apostle Paul in Philippians chapter 1, 21 through 23. Paul said, "For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. But if I live on in the flesh, this will mean fruit from my labor. Yet what I shall choose I cannot tell, for I'm hard pressed between the two, having a desire to depart and be with Christ, which is far better. What was better for Paul? To depart this physical life and to be with Christ. Is it the case that in certain circumstances it would be better for a person to leave this physical life and to go on to his or her eternal reward? Absolutely, positively. Let's read a statement that's found in Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 57, 1 and 2, "The righteous perishes, and no man takes it to heart. Merciful men are taken away, while no one considers that the righteous is taken away from evil. He shall enter into peace. They shall rest in their beds, each one walking in his own uprightness." You see what Isaiah is saying? Sometimes a person will look at the death of a righteous, innocent individual and they will say, that is such a tragedy. But what they're not considering is that that life in the physical body was a burden to that righteous or innocent person, and it was better for them, for their eternal soul, to go on and be with Christ and to receive their eternal reward with Christ. So the atheist is saying, well, God is immoral because He's commanded the death of innocent children. But if you were to ask if innocent children actually have an immortal soul, and that immortal soul lives for eternity after this life, and that immortal soul goes to be with Christ in a paradise that is much better than this life, well, who is God sinning against? Are you saying that He's sinning against the innocent children, that He's taking to be with Him and pulling them out of a life of hardship and trouble? You see, again, the inspired psalmist says, "Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of His saints." Well, the skeptic will then say, yeah, but you don't know that children go to heaven. What if when children die, they don't go to heaven? What if they go to hell that is pictured in the New Testament? You can't prove that children go to heaven, so you can't get God out of this alleged moral dilemma by saying that children go to heaven because you don't know that. No, actually we do. Actually, the Bible presents a very clear picture that when an innocent child dies, that child is in a safe condition and does, in fact, go to paradise to be with Jesus. Let me read to you several biblical passages along those lines. Matthew chapter 18, 3 through 5 says, "Assuredly I say to you," this is Jesus talking, "unless you are converted and become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one little child like this in my name receives me." That's not the only statement along these lines that Jesus made. In fact, in the book of Luke, Jesus made a similar comment when He said there in chapter 18, verses 16 through 17, "Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of God. Assuredly I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will by no means enter it." You see the picture here that God, yes, has condoned, has commanded, has directly or indirectly caused the death of children, and will. In fact, the Bible presents to us a picture that when Jesus comes again, every single human physical body on this earth will be burned up and will be replaced by a different body. Now, what happens to the innocent children who are here when Jesus comes again? Their physical life is extinguished, but they have an immortal soul. So are you saying that God is immoral because He takes the physical life back from the child that He gave the child and brings that child to an eternal paradise and gives that child more than he had on this earth? Is that immoral? You can't say that's immoral. The only possible way that you could say that that would be immoral is if you didn't understand or believe that every human being has an immortal soul. Now, The skeptic says, yes, but why don't, if that's the case, why don't we just allow all innocent children and all Christians or whoever's in a safe position, why don't we just kill them? Why don't you Christians just go and kill all the people that are innocent and kill all the people who are Christians? If death is so good for these people, why don't you just let them go ahead and die or cause their death and allow them to go to heaven? Yeah, it's a good question. The answer is very simple. We're not in a position to know when a person's life is finished here. We're not in a position to know when that should occur. Who is in a position to know that? There are two reasons why only God has the prerogative over life and death of any person. Number one, God knows everything. Dan Barker said morality is simply acting with the intention to minimize harm. He said that the best way to avoid making moral mistakes is to be as informed as possible about the likely consequences of actions being considered. Who would be in a position to be the most informed about the likely consequences? An all-knowing, all-powerful God who knows every consequence and would be the only one in a position who would know what would happen if this person's physical life was extinguished and this person went on to eternity. And there's another reason why God is the only one who has the prerogative to determine when life should or should not end. He owns it. He gave it. He's responsible for the physical lives of every human being in this world. If God gives physical life, He's the only one that has the prerogative to take physical life or to say when physical life should be taken. Listen to Ecclesiastes 12, verse 7. Then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. You see what the text is saying there is very simple. God is the one who gives physical life, and God is the only one who has the prerogative to take physical life. Not only because He gives it, but because He knows all of the consequences, and He would be the only one in a position to know exactly when would be the morally right time for a life to be extinguished. I think you're seeing that the allegation that the atheistic community makes against God cannot be sustained. God is not immoral for allowing the deaths or causing the deaths of innocent children. God is the perfectly moral being who knows every possible consequence and who gives physical life and takes that physical life under only certain conditions, and that is when a person has committed crimes that are worthy to be punished by that physical death, and or when he knows that that physical life has accomplished its purpose and he replaces or trades that physical life for an eternal paradise where the immortal soul of that individual lives forever. You see, there is a position here that's immoral, but it's certainly not the position of the God of the Bible. The position where an atheistic ethicist would take from a child all that there is, based solely on arbitrary contingencies that that person made up, not knowing the consequences and not being the giver of life, that's immoral. But the God of the Bible certainly is not.
This has been a presentation of Apologetics Press, an organization dedicated to the defense of New Testament Christianity. Visit us on the web at apologeticspress.org or call 800-234-8558.